Chapter 3. Young Angelique. Angelique often found herself swaying gently in the midst of hand-woven hammocks, the scent of sandalwood and patchouli wafting in the air. The walls of their house were adorned with psychedelic posters, paintings of serene landscapes and handcrafted dreamcatchers. Every surface seemed to shimmer with the memories of Woodstock and the summer of love. There were often sounds of soft guitar strumming, recalling the melodies of iconic artists like Janis Joplin, the Grateful Dead, and Jimi Hendrix. Though Angelique's parents had ventured into various communal societies, the very essence of those communities took root in the farming lifestyle they eventually adopted. The spirit of collaboration, community, and shared purpose flourished in the vast fields and livestock pens. The nomadic families who moved from one farm to the next symbolized the very ideals Angelique's parents had once sought: unity, shared responsibility, and sustainable living. Every morning Angelique would witness the rising sun painting the fields in golden hues, the air ripe with the scent of freshly tilled earth. The rhythmic clink of tools and the distant murmur of farmers sharing tales and experiences became her morning lullaby. While the mornings were for studies, the afternoons were for exploration. The vast expanse of their farm and the surrounding areas became Angelique's playground, and she reveled in the freedom it offered. The infrequent presence of other children meant that Angelique often found herself in the company of animals, exploring hidden nooks and crannies, or simply lying on the grass, staring at the clouds. However, the brief interactions with children her age, like Chad from the Bowman family, were always a welcome change. The Bowman's house, though just across the street, felt like a world apart. With its rustic charm and smoke billowing from the chimney, it stood in stark contrast to the colorful vibrancy of the Carringers' abode. Chad, with his tousled brown hair and perpetually muddy shoes, was quite the mischievous one. Angelique often spotted him chasing after chickens or trying to climb trees, invariably leading to some comical mishap. Even though they didn't interact much, Angelique found his antics amusing from a distance. The days rolled on, marked by the changing seasons and the ebb and flow of nomadic families visiting the farm. And as Angelique grew older, her relationship with her surroundings and the few neighbors they had, like Chad, would evolve, creating vivid memories rooted in love, community, and the simple joys of farm life. As Angelique blossomed into a young lady, she became more attuned to the intricacies of human behavior, especially among her peers. Chad's attempts at bravado never quite won her over. It seemed the more dangerous the stunt, the more distant she felt. Chad's antics often led to a bemused shake of her head as she wandered off, leaving him somewhat puzzled. In his young mind, defying gravity was surely the key to a girl's heart. However, the other boy down the road intrigued Angelique. There was something mysterious about him. Unlike Chad's conspicuous stunts, this boy seemed to blend with nature, often disappearing into the woods for hours. She'd occasionally spot him, with a stick in hand, intently observing the ground or silently watching the birds. Angelique's curiosity about the quiet boy grew, but she never found the right moment to approach him. Life on the farm was a blend of work and leisure. Angelique's parents ensured she understood the value of labor, but they also recognized the importance of her education. Between the toils of the land and the rigors of school, Angelique molded into a well-rounded individual. The oscillating presence of other families brought a unique dynamism to their lives. Sometimes the farm would burst with activity: children's laughter, shared meals, songs around a bonfire. At other times it was just the Carringers, with the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the soothing hum of nature as their soundtrack. Through it all, Angelique cherished the lessons she learned. The diverse personalities she encountered taught her tolerance. The changing landscape of the farm, with its seasons of plenty and scarcity, instilled resilience. The quiet moments, especially the times she'd find herself staring at the woods, wondering about the lanky boy, taught her the beauty of mystery and the value of patience. Little did she know, as the years would roll on, the farm, with its many characters and stories, would shape her destiny in ways she couldn't even begin to fathom. Living in the tranquility of the Carringer farm, Angelique's homeschooling was thorough, encompassing subjects from math to poetry. Yet she yearned for something her parents, rooted in the ideals of the 60s, couldn't provide: the simple everyday interactions with peers her age. While her academic needs were well met, the farm's isolation left a gap in her social education. Despite brief encounters with the likes of Chad and the mysterious boy down the lane, Angelique often found herself gazing beyond the farm, wondering about the shared giggles, whispered secrets, and companionship that school might offer. She often wondered, will I ever experience those for myself? Angelique's heart would leap whenever old Jerry and his wife arrived to assist with the spring planting. Unlike the usual peace-loving members of their community, Jerry was a stark contrast, a former Army Ranger from Vietnam. With her parents often sidestepping the gritty details of wars and conflicts in their teachings, it was Jerry who painted those vivid images for her. As they toiled side by side, he'd regale her with tales of his escapades in Vietnam and his time in the military. Jerry wasn't one to meld seamlessly into the tranquil rhythms of farm life, nor had he ever been enthralled by the arts of basket weaving or pottery. It was love, not lifestyle, that brought him here. He'd married into the community. Nonetheless, like clockwork, Jerry and his wife made their biannual visits. Each time Angelique spotted their vehicle approaching, her eyes lit up, and the moment they departed, she'd start her eager countdown, awaiting their return with the same fervor she reserved for Christmas. Every visit from Jerry brought with it a new fighting move for Angelique. It was their unspoken bond. Jerry saw in her the spirit of a true warrior. With each arrival, her eyes gleamed with anticipation, eager to demonstrate her mastery of the techniques he'd shown her in their previous sessions. Diligently, she practiced these moves, even if in secret, knowing her parents wouldn't approve. The revelation came one day when Angelique, buzzing with enthusiasm and a touch of youthful eagerness, attempted to show her mother a move. She tried to sweep her mother's feet from beneath her. At 9 years old and barely 60 pounds, her attempt didn't have the desired effect. Still, it raised questions. When her mother realized the source of this newfound knowledge, turmoil rippled through the community. Mrs. Carringer's indignation at Jerry was great, so strong in fact that Jerry and his wife skipped their usual visit for the fall harvest. Every day, a disheartened Angelique would ask her parents, "Where's old Jerry? Will he come back?" Her voice would waver just a bit more with each query. Nearly a year elapsed before Angelique's eyes lit up again at the sight of Jerry and his wife. Although the initial tension seemed to have dissipated, a noticeable change had occurred. Gone were the days of spirited tales and lessons in combat. Angelique missed their special moments together, and from the way Jerry avoided her gaze, she knew he did too. Weeks went by, with Angelique patiently waiting for an opportune moment to reconnect with Jerry. Seizing a moment of privacy, she'd implore, "Come on, old Jerry," and effortlessly execute one of their prior moves, hoping to reignite the old spark between them. Each time, Jerry would tell her, "You have to stop," or "Your mother and father do not want you learning those things," at the same time reminding her, "There is nothing I can do." All the while, he would look around to make sure that no one saw her doing the moves. He too had the same sad face as Angelique. A week later, Angelique broke Jerry. She had him telling stories and showing her new techniques. They both knew and understood that it would be life-changing for both of them if anyone ever found out. Jerry remembered the scolding he had received from Angelique's father the year before and didn't want a repeat of that. After old Jerry had finally relented, Angelique took him on a walk to the back of the field where the woods began. She was very excited to show him the training ground she had created. She had ropes, logs to run on for balance, trees she climbed regularly, and even a scarecrow stuffed with old clothes and hay. Jerry could tell by the bare ground, frayed rope, and missing bark from the trees that she had trained a great deal. Seeing the area reinforced Jerry's belief that Angelique was a warrior. During the planting and harvesting seasons, Angelique learned everything Jerry wanted to show her. She was always sad to see the seasons come to an end, but she looked forward to practicing her new moves until Jerry's return. On Angelique's 12th birthday, Jerry had a gift for her that she couldn't have imagined. Like normal, Jerry and Martha pulled up the driveway under the watchful eyes of Angelique. No sooner had they stopped their truck and trailer than Angelique was at the driver's side door. Jerry always played it cool with her, even though he too had become very excited to see how well her training had advanced. Very little gave him more excitement these days than working with Angelique. Jerry had always wanted children, but for some unknown reason, he and his wife could not conceive. The desire for the children they didn't have eased when Angelique took an interest in old Jerry's military past. This year, Jerry was more excited than most. Angelique was finally old enough in his eyes to move to the next level of her training. "I have a birthday surprise for you," he said, and looked down. Angelique was just a little puzzled by that, since her birthday had been months before, and he had stopped getting her things years ago. She always told him that the training he gave her was the best gift she could ever ask for. With a grin, Angelique looked up at Jerry and didn't say a word in return. She could tell by his tone that he didn't want one. She gave both him and Martha hugs once they had exited the vehicle, then ran around the house to let her parents know that they had arrived. 3 days passed. Jerry spent most of his time with Angelique's father. Thinking about what he might have got her as a gift, Angelique was about to lose her mind. She was also dying to show him how well she had mastered her last lesson. Jerry could see her watching him, waiting for him to give her a signal that it was time for a new lesson, or in this case, her gift. For the first 3 days, he stayed away from her as he had planned. Jerry wanted nothing more than to get on with her lessons, but he had to be sure that she was capable of not giving away their secret. He knew that she was good at not speaking of it when things were going well. He just felt like she needed to be tested on self-control before moving to the next stage. Jerry understood that her parents had almost banished Martha and him over a few fighting moves, and if they found out about what he had planned for the next stage, then he figured that he would be murdered by hippies. As he was on his way to bed, Jerry stuck his head into Angelique's room and said ever so softly, "Tomorrow." Angelique's eyes opened wide. Excitement and wonder filled her for the next few hours. She had no clue what he had planned, and even when she awoke in the morning, her first thoughts were of what it could be. Old Jerry was already sitting at the table, having his morning breakfast and chatting with her father about some horses his buddy in the area had. From what she could hear of the conversation, Jerry was going to be gone for most of the day. Angelique was starting to feel a little drained from wondering what her gift would be. After all, they had arrived 4 days ago. She continued to control herself. "I'll load the hay from the barn and run it over there. I'm sure his horses will love it. Should be a repeat buyer for you." That was the last thing Angelique heard Jerry say to her father as he stood and walked out the back door. "Great, that'll take all day," Angelique exclaimed under her breath. "What was that, Angel?" her father asked. "I'm hungry. Are we having pancakes?" she asked, and put a fake smile on her face. When Angelique was close to being finished with her breakfast, old Jerry stepped through the door and walked over to the counter where the coffee pot sat. He could feel her eyes following him as he walked through the door and crossed the room. "You about done there, Ange? We have to get moving soon," Jerry said as he filled his cup. "Done," she replied while chewing. "Great. See you in the truck in 5. Drinking his coffee, Jerry turned and gave her a wink as he headed for the door. The excitement was more than Angelique could take. She had been waiting patiently for 4 days. Well, at least it looked like she was patient on the outside. As it turned out, 5 minutes for her to get in the truck were 4.5 more than she needed. She didn't think Jerry would ever get in. Jerry walked over to the truck and gave the passenger side front tire one kick and then another. Angelique sat in the passenger seat and watched. He then slowly walked to the back tire on the same side and then gave it a light kick. He seemed to be checking the air in his tires. That was it. She could not wait any longer. Angelique pressed her thumb quickly on the buckle release for the seatbelt, and it quickly retracted. But before it had fully finished, she was already on her way out the door. She ran to the driver's side, where she kicked the front tire, moved to the rear of the truck, where she kicked the rear driver's side tire, moved to the trailer on the same side, where she kicked the tire, ran to the other side of the trailer and again kicked tires, and then moved to the back of the truck, stretched her short legs under it, and kicked the spare tire. "All good," she said calmly, looking directly at Jerry, who was looking back at her with the biggest grin. "Okay," he replied, as she turned and headed back to the passenger side. Angelique's vibrant spirit reflected in the playful bounce of her short blonde hair, reminiscent of cheerleader pom-poms in motion. As she secured herself in the truck, Jerry, with that familiar grin plastered across his face, took a moment to admire her vivaciousness. Their playful banter had run its course, and now Jerry was primed to unveil his surprise. However, as they journeyed down the winding road, Jerry awaited her probing questions about the secret. Yet, Angelique, in a surprising twist, remained silent, perhaps intuitively trying to return the playful gesture by making him initiate the conversation. The silent tug-of-war stretched on until, after almost 30 minutes, the unexpected occurred. "Damn, Ange, you are one stubborn girl." Jerry was the first to break. His buddy's place was less than a 30-minute drive, but they were pulling a trailer which was slowing them down. "What is it?" she half-yelled, unable to contain herself anymore. "Am I going to get to ride my first horse?" she asked with a smile. "Yes," he replied. "That's not your birthday gift." Angelique was puzzled. She wondered, how could taking her to ride her first horse not be the surprise? "First, you will learn to ride a horse," Jerry said, and then paused as they turned into the driveway of his friend's horse ranch. "Then we are going to spend the rest of the day with firearm training." He began to get worried. Angelique's face just went blank and all emotion left her expression. Jerry was so concerned that he brought the truck slowly to a stop. She looked almost catatonic. He turned to her. "Angelique?" Jerry asked as if he were looking for her. She unbuckled her seatbelt and leaped upon him in one swift movement. Jerry had no clue what was happening until he suddenly realized that she was hanging from his neck, hugging him. Angelique was speechless. That planting season they made many trips out to Jerry's buddy's ranch for horse riding lessons. That was the cover. Angelique did learn how to ride a horse, but not nearly to the extent that she learned about firearms. Jerry and his buddy taught her everything, starting with firearm safety, pistols, tactical movements, and long-range marksmanship with big-bore rifles. Over the next few years, Angelique learned about reloading her rounds, ballistics, the purpose of different bullets, and much more. She also discovered that her favorite sidearm was a Colt 1911, 45 ACP. Even though Angelique very much enjoyed her life, especially when Jerry came around, she felt that she was missing out by not attending public school. She watched every morning as a school bus would pick up the neighbor boy and wished that she, too, could get on the bus. Every day in Angelique's house started with begging her parents to attend public school, like the rest of the kids in the neighborhood. To her, it looked like the neighborhood kids were always having fun on the bus, and she wanted to have fun with friends. After about a year of this daily routine, her parents gave in and allowed Angelique to give it a try. She was so very excited her first day that she was out at the end of the driveway and waiting for the bus a half hour before its scheduled arrival. "Oh no," Angelique thought, as she saw the neighbor boy coming out of his house. She had hoped to get on the bus before he came out. From what she had noticed, he was always running out his front door after the bus had already stopped and begun to honk. Today, of all days, he decides to come out before the bus arrives, she thought to herself. "What are you doing?" Chad, the neighbor boy, asked with a confused look. "You going to school?" He followed up without giving her a chance to answer his first question. "I thought you did school at home. Why would you want to go to a real school?" Angelique had no idea which of his many questions to answer first. They just kept coming from him, and he never gave her a chance to answer before asking another. "Yes," she said with a beautiful smile. She figured Chad had asked so many questions that he wouldn't know which one she was answering. Chad was a little red-headed, freckled boy who annoyed Angelique most of the time, yet she never showed it. "I hear the bus," she said with excitement, and she knew that her first day of school would soon begin.